Hello, and welcome back to the Librarian of the Rings. My name is Ben, and I'm the librarian. Today we're going to talk about one of the things that I hope they do with the Hunt for Gollum movie that was just recently announced. Welcome back. So today I want to talk about the new Hunt for Gollum film that they are starting to work on. This would be Peter Jackson as producer and Andy Serkis as director, which is about all we know so far, and the working title, which is The Hunt for Gollum. Now that indicates something very specific. The Hunt for Gollum has been referred to for a long time, and it is the time in which Gandalf and Aragorn seek for Gollum in order to find out more about Bilbo's ring. That's what we're talking about, and I did a video talking about what the source material for this film could be. It comes down to about 12 pages from the Fellowship of the Ring, found in the chapter The Shadow of the Past, and also the Council of Elrond. So that's really where they're able to pull this from. And there's one really important thing that I hope they do, or rather don't do, when they're making this film. What I hope is that they just don't try to stick to chronology from the Peter Jackson trilogy. That's going to be very tempting because it's going to be Peter Jackson and Andy Serkis. Andy's still going to be playing Gollum, and so it's going to look very much like the Jackson trilogy. The problem is, there's no time in the Jackson trilogy for the Hunt for Gollum to take place. I just rewatched The Fellowship of the Ring, the extended edition, in order to check this out. And the pace of that movie is so fast, which is understandable. There's a lot that they have to cover, and even with a lot of time, it's hard to cover all of it. So the pace moves very fast. And if they try and stick with the timeline that they've set up in the films, it's not going to work at all. If you remember, in The Fellowship of the Ring, there are 17 years between when Bilbo leaves and The Shadows of the Past, when Gandalf returns. Now, Gandalf comes intermittently during that time to check on Frodo, but he's gone for a long time, which is not at all what happens in the film, which is essentially like, we basically need to get on the road immediately. And there's some key problems with that that's going to cause issues in the Hunt for Gollum, because they don't really have a time slot in which to put a time where Gandalf and then Aragorn can hunt for Gollum. So let me just give you a reading from The Shadows of the Past here that kind of sets up the timeline where this takes place. So Gandalf has come back. This is 17 years after. He's talking to Frodo. Frodo asks how he discovered that the ring was the One Ring, and he says, "Just now in this room, of course, but I expected to find it. I have come back from dark journeys and long search to make the final test. It is the last proof, and all is now only too clear. Making out Gollum's part and fitting it into the gap in the history required some thought. I may have started with guesses about Gollum, but I am not guessing now. I know I have seen him." So he's coming back from talking with Gollum, and you need a gap of time. It doesn't necessarily have to be 17 years, but it needs to be a significant gap of time in order for the Hunt for Gollum to even take place, because Gandalf has to go try to find Gollum, but he needs to go try and find him, enlist the Wood Elves. They track Gollum through the woods and ultimately lose his trail. Gandalf decides to abandon it for a time, then tries to return to it to pick up the trail, and this time he enlists the help of Aragorn, because Aragorn is his trusted friend and also a master tracker, of course. And so Aragorn will eventually, after great peril, be able to find Gollum, capture him, bring him back to the Wood Elves, where Gandalf can then interrogate him. And in the film, there's just no time for this to take place. While that is happening, Gollum is in Mordor and revealing the name, which is not exactly what happens in the book. It's a little bit adjusted. And then the Ringwraiths travel very quickly, far more quickly than they should be able to, but they travel very quickly because it's a movie, to the Shire, and you have all of these chase scenes, and Gandalf is able to travel very quickly to see Saruman, and there's no time in there where Gollum could come out of Mordor and be captured by Aragorn, be interrogated by Gandalf, and then help them figure it out. And I think if they try and fit this in to the timeline of the movie, I'm not sure where they would do it. They would basically have to move that all in advance of the party, and then have Gollum captured after they interrogate him. They'd have to have him escape and then be captured, or maybe they could have him be captured as part of his escape, captured by Sauron's forces, and then reveal the location of the Shire. So if they try and fit that in, I think it's going to feel really awkward. And I know that the risk here would be to confuse people who are only fans of the movie, who would be like, wait, how can they be hunting for Gollum if they're on their way to Rivendell? It's going to be confusing for sure. So either way, I think it's going to be confusing to people. And I think the best option is for them to just try and adhere as best they can to what's happening in the book, and not try and make it seem like the Hunt for Gollum is something that you can fit in with the other films. Kind of make it a standalone film. Don't try and make it fit too closely in with the others. That being said, I'm really hopeful for The Hunt for Gollum. I think it could turn out really well. I think this kind of side story where there isn't a lot of material, so there's a lot of leeway for the filmmakers and the stakes aren't as high for the fans, can be really, really helpful. I think back to Rogue One and Star Wars. Rogue One, the standalone story that they did was actually really good. It's a really great film. It's a really great story, and I think really masterfully put together. And I would love to see that kind of thing happen with The Hunt for Gollum if they just don't worry too much about fitting it into their existing continuity of the Jackson films and just kind of tell the story that they came here to tell. It won't make everybody happy. It might not make me happy, but I hope they make a good film out of this that really feels like we're getting a new story that we just didn't have before while still fitting in the details that we do have in the books. And that's basically it for today. This is just kind of my thought on The Hunt for Gollum here and what they should do as far as continuity with the other films goes. I'd love to hear from you what you think about this. Are you excited for The Hunt for Gollum? What do you think they should do about the timeline? Do you see a way that they could kind of squeeze it in to the film timeline, or should they just go ahead and work with the book timeline on this one? Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, farewell wherever you fare. May your ears receive you at your journey's end.